So I'm going to talk about some things today, and a lot of you guys, you're going to maybe think it's a little crazy or far out or not believe it, and that's okay, because a few years ago, if someone would have talked to me about this stuff, I would have thought maybe they're crazy or it's all fake or it's just plain stupid. And on this channel, I like to talk to younger men, guys in their teens, 20s, early 30s, and this channel is about helping you navigate and giving you practical information that you can use to actually make your life better. And a lot of you guys, you younger guys, just like me a few years ago, you're going to be at a point in your life when you're not totally ready to accept a message like I'm going to give in this video, because you've been programmed your whole life. And when you've been programmed your whole life to believe certain things, when someone introduces a new concept or a different concept than what you've been programmed to hear, you're not going to be so accepting to it. So for a lot of you guys that aren't at that point in your life where you're ready for a message like this, I just kind of want to introduce these concepts to you, things for you to consider. And I have a couple points for this before we get into the news story. And number one takeaway from this that I want you to consider is the elites of society, they are not atheists. And I realized this myself going back a few years, and you have to look no further than the Pizzagate emails, the leaked John Podesta emails, that these elites, they are not atheists. They believe in a higher power, higher sources. Even if they want a lot of you guys to believe they are atheists, that's not the case. That's if you look at what they actually practice in their private and personal lives, a lot of these people, they believe in actual Satanism. People that are politicians, Hollywood people, the total elites of society. Those people that have those lifestyles that a lot of other people envy, that real success. And I'm going to get to that. The number two takeaway I want you to remember from this is, or to consider, is that being satanic, going towards those darker forces, the reality is that they can give you power in this world. Now, the devil is the ultimate liar. He's the ultimate deceiver. If you look back to the beginning, the Garden of Eden, he lied to Eve. He convinced her that if she eats from the forbidden fruit, she will get the knowledge that God has and become a god herself. Well, that was a total lie. That's not what happened. It actually made her mortal to where she can die, and she lived a life in shame after that. It was a total trick. Now, the reality is, though, a lot of the times the devil does fulfill those promises, and it will make you powerful in this world. And going back to the first concept of the elites are not atheists, even if they want you to believe they are. I saw this podcast some time ago where Joe Rogan, he had this comedic actor from Canada that he used to be on a TV show with, and this is a guy that said during the podcast that God isn't real. But then they were talking about how this guy's wife, she throws these satanic parties. And you can say what you will, you can believe what you want of, well, they're just having fun, they're just looking at it as a fantasy character. But when you think about it, is the devil very interesting or fun as a fantasy character? What fantasy characters do people get into? Well, these days you see a lot of people into Game of Thrones, you see a lot of people into Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. I'm not really familiar with a lot of the more modern fantasy characters. Or you see people into the Marvel characters, people like Spider-Man, the Avengers, whatever. Me, I don't generally like fantasy characters, but the one I liked always growing up was Superman. And these other characters, whether they're Marvel characters, whether these TV or movie characters, superheroes, whatever, they're at least fun as fantasy characters. You can have a lot of fun with them. The devil really isn't that interesting just as a fantasy character. But they say one of the greatest tricks the devil ever played was to convince you that he's not real. And I understand, to a lot of you guys, you think he's not. Just a few years ago, myself, that's what I would believe. If anyone would talk about demonic forces or the devil, I'd just be like, man, you're crazy. Because to me, growing up, seeing John Lovitz play the devil on Saturday Night Live, you think it's just some sort of goofy, funny concept, and you don't really believe in it. But I'm telling you, the elites are not atheists. They actually believe in these things, and we'll get to this interesting story that just came out. And if you think I'm crazy for talking about this, then you have to at least But you have to also admit that the mainstream media, for putting this story out there into our consciousness, they're also crazy. So let's take a look at this news story. So here, this is from Bloomberg. Bill Gates says Steve Jobs casts spells, really demonic spells. Bill Gates says Steve Jobs cast spells to keep Apple from dying. So this is an example of you do get some success in this world for doing it. Steve Jobs says, I was like a minor wizard because he would be casting spells and I would see people mesmerized. But because I'm a minor wizard, the spells don't work on me. That's what Bill Gates had to say. And now what kind of person is Bill Gates? Well, he's obviously into this certain agenda where he wants the one world stuff. He's promoting vaccines, vegetarianism. He wants to make it so people can't eat meat anymore. He wants to take away a lot of your choices in terms of a lot of the personal decisions that you make in your life. But it's very true. And Bill Gates, you might say, well, Travis, if you look into Bill Gates' history, he wasn't actually demonic. He practiced Hindu religions, Hindu practices. Well, if you look at those Hindu practices, they would directly go against Christianity. And you have to look no further than the very logo of Apple. What is their logo? Well, let's take a look at it here. I have an iPhone myself, and this is something on my main channel, one of my Patreon supporters, that they gave me. I didn't have any kind of cell phone at all, and they were getting a new one. They said, hey, you want my old one? And I said, sure. Now, I don't use this a lot, but let's take a look at their logo. There you go. What is their logo? What does that represent? Well, obviously, it's a representation of what to a Christian this would represent is sin, number one, because it goes back to taking a bite out of that forbidden fruit, and the betrayal of God. So these things, they're not accident. They don't just happen to do these. These aren't mere coincidences that just happen to come up. These people know what they're doing. So I want you to consider these concepts that, number one, the elites, they are not atheists. And they do believe in these things. And number two, that the reality is, in this world, being satanic, being evil, being bad, it can do a lot of things for you. It can give you a lot of power in our world. So sometimes the devil, he does fulfill those promises, but ultimately the most powerful is God. And when I was telling my wife about this story this morning when I first saw it, she pointed out something very interesting to me. She's a very sharp lady, and she said, that's why these people don't want to die. And I thought about it, and I thought, she's right. If you look at the end of Steve Jobs' life, he did a lot. He did everything he could to prevent from dying, because then it's time to pay the piper. It's time to, they know they have to pay up on the exchange that they made. And that's why you get into all this transhumanism movement. A lot of these people, these really bad people, these evil people, they want to live forever. And a lot of them do, like George Soros, live a very long time. But they're trying to keep from dying, because that's when they're going to have to. Now, if you come from a Christian belief system, and maybe you don't, like I said, I'm just kind of introducing concepts to you, and I'm not really an expert on this stuff. I'm new to a lot of this stuff myself, and I'm just sharing things with you that I've been researching, things that I've been learning. But if you have a Christian perspective, what happens when you die? Well, you don't actually die. This body goes to sleep, and you live on. So that's a concept to consider. And even if you don't believe in the devil or anything like that, at the very least, you have to admit that these elites of society, they want to push an agenda because they do feel they will be rewarded for it. I've been watching Who's the Boss on TV. They've been showing that a lot on the main channel that I watch. And Alyssa Milano was this very cute little girl. But now you look at her. What does she do? Just go to her Twitter feed. Everything that she pushes is evil. Even things that should not have an effect on her life, one way or another, she's going to push it if it's evil. So keep these concepts in mind. Like, these are just things for you to consider. You don't have to believe in this gung-ho right away. I just want to get this information out to you because I think it's really going to help you once you start to see these things, that the elites, they are not atheists. And number two, that being bad, being evil, following Satan, it can give you power in this world, but this world is not forever. And ultimately, the most powerful is God.